If you're listening on the archives, we are waiting for the show to begin. Let's get some folks tuned in so we can talk about what's going on today. Let's listen to some separate beats until all right. Looks like we got one person on, so that's good enough. There we go. We got a super. It's got to be a super fan on right now. Let me know if you can hear me coming through. Number one, and also any other audio or any other feedback. Thank you so much because I don't know. This is had to move the setup around and blah blah blah. Lots of stuff going on. But let's see here. I think my audio is good. Move this mic. I think I can keep it still good. Let me know, please, if you can. And let me transition. Stand by. Give this. One of these days, I'm gonna have a live editor person or producer person who's gonna help out with moving this stuff back and forth. All right, hold on one sec. Sorry about that. And here we go. So we are in a sort of new situation at the shop studios. If you're used to tuning in now, hold on. I didn't account for my lighting situation. I don't know if this is gonna be any better. Hold on. Let me try something out. This is the cool part about having like a literal shop or garage. Um, let's see. Does that help? I know I was getting a weird shadow. I don't know if that helps. No, I don't think that helps. You guys tell me. All right, let me see who's even out there. Let's see. On the chat, do we got anybody on? No? Yeah. I think there's some latency going on right now on the feed, and I think that is affecting some things a little bit. to be honest with you. So let me change some things around. Okay. All right. So we looks like we've got at least somebody out there. Let me know how things are going. Maybe you have already, and I just haven't interacted yet. I think there's some delay going on right now. Okay, so either way, in this the show we're talking about, it's titled Fast Fashion. Why? It is a little play on fascism, and yeah, we've got a question there. And I think there. All right, I'm messing around with some of the settings on YouTube. Some of you guys might see there's a poll in there asking whether or not you would vote for a third-party candidate in 2020. Just a little side poll to discuss what your opinions are out there in the world, so we can talk about it. And by the way, tell your friends and folks that you know, even people you don't even like, maybe not friends, people that you've had arguments with, and you're like, you know what? I'm tired of arguing with you. Bring your debate here and put it on my shoulders, maybe. I mean, unless it's something I don't agree with, and then I'm going to argue with you about your point, and that might be that's where the best shows come from, I think. Someone says, "No, James, you are saying this crazy thing, and you should be stopped." And I say, well, perhaps it is crazy what I say, and let's talk about it. Um, you know. And so, by the way, sorry about this sort of last minute thing. We are filming in the shop studios, meaning it is a shop where stuff happens, things get worked on, and so the normal Boyd or the Boyd place that I film and do stuff is inundated with tools right now. So you get a different perspective. There's other things now. You don't get to see what's her name, Audrey Hepburn, I believe. Yes, I don't remember. Okay, so let's go back to see. Looks like nobody's jumping onto the live chat. By the way, you can use the live chat. Maybe again, there could be a delay. So anyway, talking about fascism. Now, you hear that word thrown around. I know during the Obama administration, a lot of folks, especially Tea Party people, were saying that Obama was fascist, and that simultaneously, and this is where the things get sort of weird. And I'm sorry that I'm moving around. This table is wobbling around, and it's making it tough to deal with stuff. So yeah, like I said, this is, oh god, terrible noises. Impromptu thing about being in the shop studios. Now, eventually, maybe have a different studio. I don't know. I think some people like being distracted by the crap that's in the back of the the thing, because sometimes what we're talking about gets sort of crazy. So yeah, like something like now, like fascism. So we've, at least I remember hearing in the Obama administration how Obama was a fascist and his policies were fascist and he was Hitler and stuff, at least from the Tea Party. Now, from the left, we are seeing Hitler and fascist stuff going on with, excuse me, sorry, there's bugs here in the shop studio. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so I mean, the right, at least there's sort of like a right wing fascist movement going on or whatever, and Trump is spearheading that. So we people who lived through both dynamics know that Obama is quite a bit different than Trump, and so how are these the same? I guess obviously either someone's wrong or they're the same, right? Because they're both being compared to the same thing. So I'm gonna try to get sort of to that in a way. So I had something queued up, but then it got all screwed up. Man. Okay, so bear with me for a second. I want to show you a there's a video by Renegade Cut, and the link to the video is in the description for this live show and video. And so you can link to that yourself and watch it. But I want to show it to you because I think it does a good job of just sort of talking about fascism in general, so that everybody's speaking the same language. Now you could say, well, there's some bias here, especially since I am saying, check this out. Obviously, I'm biased towards this. So if you have a different take on what he's saying in this video, then by all means, please let's talk about it. I'm not saying everything's 100%. I'm just saying that it does a good job, and it's somewhat, and it's pretty entertaining, and it uses pop culture to sort of help sort of solidify or place some other cultural contexts that may have influenced stuff like sci-fi stuff and whatnot. In fact, this one is talking about um, basically Star Wars, like fascist imagery in Star Wars. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and stand by while I transition this over. So, by the way, put your comments on there. What's your feedback so far? Can you hear things okay? Perhaps there is a delay. I can go. All right, I have to do some technical switcheroos here because everything has to be crazy like that. All right. And still, looks like we have one person still on with us, which is great. One person out of the billions of folks on this planet tuned in tonight on the board. All right, so there's. All right, so let me know. Can you hear everything okay? Is the audio okay? Also, what are your thoughts on fascism? Before we even dive into it, what are sort of your thoughts on what does fascism represent to you? What is, like, if you had to sum it up, so put this in the comments, even if you're watching this on the archives, put it in the comments as well, etc. Okay, so let me go here. Pardon me, and anybody that coughs now is suspect. All right, so Okay, I hope this works. I'm just trying. How can it work like last time we had the show, everything worked the way I wanted it to. In fact, I think I showed a little, um, what's it called? There we go. Oh, I showed a excerpt from Asterisk and Obelisk, the cartoon, and that was, I got all sorts of warnings and whatever. I don't know how I can maybe give them credit or something so that I don't get in trouble. But anyway, here is Renegade Cut, and they are talking. Oh, no, 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 that's not what I want. They are talking about. They are talking about fascism. So let's. Okay, there we go. Transition. Why isn't this? Okay, there we go. This hopefully should work.
Fascism. Let's talk about it. This should be a light topic. Fascism is a slippery word, not because it's hard to define, but because people who want to obscure what fascism is or hide their connection to fascism have an investment in making fascism mean something besides what it is. Fascism is not outlawing salt and unhealthy foods. It's authoritarian, but not always totalitarian. It's not only confined to a couple states from last century, and it's definitely not someone throwing a mug at your head. It's also not left wing or socialist, and if you believe it is, you have either fallen for 80-year-old debunked German propaganda, or you are consciously trying to spread 80-year-old debunked German propaganda. It's a transparent game of, I know you are, but what am I, that is only believed by people desperate to believe it in the first place.
Okay, so that's probably where a lot of people would find some kind of or take some kind of I don't know, have difference with this video. Probably one of the main things. But let's talk about it. So if you feel that way, let's talk about it. But let's see what else Renegade Cut has to say about fascism.
Not only were fascist states not left wing, they actively hated and exterminated actual socialists. Modern day mask off fascists march to exterminate or strip away rights from marginalized people. They don't campaign for Medicare for all. Neo Nazis don't love Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. They don't align with far left groups to dismantle traditional hierarchies in order to create an egalitarian world. They want the opposite of that. Fascists love traditional hierarchical structures. They are very excited about them. Maybe too excited. Fascism is part of the authoritarian right on that politics graph that people put in their avatars when they can't think of something better, like Heath Ledger's Joker or a suspiciously young looking anime character. See, I say fascism is a slippery word, but not actually hard to define because historians can simply look at how fascism arose in its varying and most famous forms and find commonalities to give it a definition. And they have. The simplest and most unassailable definition of fascism is that it is a rebirth of populist ultranationalism. This is the definition given famously by Roger Griffin, a professor of modern history and political theorist at Oxford Brookes University. The more complicated definition would be, and everything that comes from that, like the rejection of modernism, an obsession with the plot against the nation, which spreads xenophobia, and so forth. This criteria is attributed to Umberto Eco. So what does this have to do with Star Wars? Well, Star Wars has always trafficked in fascistic imagery. A New Hope's costume designer crafted the Empire's uniforms to put the audience in mind of Nazi Germany. This might seem like a tenuous connection to some, but fascism has always relied on pageantry and an aesthetic to sell it to the people. In film, visuals are everything, and even if if Grand Moff Tarkin never turns to the camera and lays out the ideology, origins, and core values of the Empire, and how they relate to Umberto Eco's criteria for fascism, the visuals alone are the language in which Star Wars tells the audience roughly what the Empire believes. In the original trilogy, there isn't a lot of explicit focus on what the Empire believes, what their core values are. Palpatine just believes in the dark side. The Empire is an amorphous bad guy. However, there are a few moments in the original trilogy that brush up against Eco's criteria for fascism. Professor Griffin argues that fascism requires an upending of the current order and current democratic institutions. Early in A New Hope, the Empire remarks that they have finally dissolved the Senate, removing the last remnants of the old republic. Remember, fascism is about a rebirth of ultranationalism. A left-wing radical change in government generally happens outside the system within a revolution. A marginalized people with no institutional power fighting against their oppressors with the only option they have left. A right-wing radical change in government, fascism, happens within the system, although illegal means within the system usually occur and can take advantage of current power structures.
See, and I think that's where there's a lot of definition, or yeah, definition. I mean, people aren't speaking the same language. You know, they're throwing around this word fascism, and we're not really talking about some of the real tenets of what is or isn't fascist, or at least, I mean, even if we were looking at it in a purely academic sense, at least let's look at it from some shared reference. You know what I mean? So at least we're talking about the same thing. Um, so if someone is saying, "Look, I'm literally saying this is a fascist thing. This is what this policy is, or what this action is, equates to a fascist um, policy, or fits the mold for fascism, what would be considered fascism." So, I mean, that's at least if people were privy to what the same, had the, or at least had the same idea or same definition, that would help things. But let's take a look at what Renegade Cut also has to say about that.
Translated to Star Wars, the rebels and later resistance want a change because their people are oppressed, and the Empire wants a rebirth because they wanted to do the oppressing. Fascism is a response to a growing egalitarianism, or influence of the minority that the majority finds humiliating, and a national defeat that they also find humiliating. The Nazis rose to power in Germany following their humiliating defeat in World War I, the humiliation of being solely blamed for the war and the sanctions imposed on their nation. Professor Griffin explained it like this. Fascism may be defined as a form of political behavior marked by obsessive preoccupation with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood, and by compensatory cults of unity, energy, and purity, in which a mass-based party of committed nationalist militants, working in uneasy but effective collaboration with traditional elites, abandons democratic liberties and pursues with redemptive violence and without ethical or legal restraints.
Now, for the folks that are out there that are one of those Tea Party folks that believes that Obama was an example of a fascist person, or that the left wing was or is currently a fascist movement, whatever the left wing is, however you're defining it, then would you say that were a lot of Obama supporters who were like that fit this definition at all? Obsessive preoccupation with community decline. I mean, maybe I guess there was that whole Acorn thing. Okay, great. So some community folks, but what were they doing? They were trying to help mobilize the community to help itself. It seemed like, anyway. I don't know if the Acorn was actually a front group or something or not. So they say, but they also supposedly did a lot of good things. This preoccupation with humiliation. I don't think there was any kind of real preoccupation with humiliation, other than maybe there was some folks that are like, oh, it's a chance to get a black president, so yay, let's do it. Or victimhood, um, by compensatory cults of, of unity, energy, purity, etc. So, um, were there nationalist militants? I would hardly say there were any kind of nationalist militants. And they certainly, I mean, there was definitely, Obama was working with elites, but I mean, they definitely went along with. I mean, if fascism is happening, then then if it was happening under Obama, then it's definitely happening under Trump. So you could say that there is an effective collaboration with traditional elites, and abandons democratic liberties because, I mean, do we really believe? I mean, how much do we believe that we are able to, actually make have control over the vote, etc. Does your vote really count? All that kind of stuff. I don't know. What do you guys think? That's the big question to me. Um, all right, let's see. What do we got here? Got any? Nobody's coming. Looks like we still got one person on. What is up? Must be a super fan. If you're not, if you're new to the Boyd, thanks for tuning in. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. It would be great to get some discussion about this because this might be something that happens right now. One thing to think about is that history is something that we are living through right now. That is something we have to think about. So we can't get stuck thinking that this is only something that applies to yesteryear because this could be happening, as we speak. Anyway, so let's get through this. It's a few more minutes. We probably, we don't need to get through the whole thing, but there are some interesting. Oh no, that's not what was supposed to happen. There's some interesting points that he does bring up. So let's see what else goes on.
Goals of internal cleansing and external expansion. In the prequel trilogy, Senator Palpatine works within the system but illegally uses his position to consolidate power. He invents a scapegoat, pits his people against them, abandons democratic liberties, and pursues violence without ethical or legal constraints. His goal was external expansion, the Empire itself, and internal cleansing, Order 66. The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi actually go harder when comparing the antagonists to fascists. Some of it blatantly obvious, like the unmistakable imagery used here, and some of it a bit more subtle, particularly as it relates to the whole rebirth after humiliation and defeat aspect of fascism. In a fascist movement, the past is romanticized to the point that the image of the past is obscured. The past becomes less of a memory and more of a fiction. In Italy, the fascists wanted to rid the nation of the scourge of modernism, communism, and liberalism. Italian fascism required respect for tradition and a shared past among the Italian people. Italian fascists sought to complete Risorgimento, Italian unification of different states into the Kingdom of Italy, a movement begun almost a century prior but left incomplete. To achieve the goals of Italian greatness, fascists espoused three core values: hierarchy, discipline, and order. Fascism always wants to return to an older order and claim it as the original one and the correct one. More than unification, Italian fascism invoked the past by claiming that Italy was the rightful heir to the Roman Empire itself. Fascism always tells people, once we were great, but we lost our way because of our enemy, and we will be great again if we do what is necessary. Benito Mussolini claimed that his people, the Mediterranean, were a branch of the Aryan race, though Italian fascism was far more focused on justifying its actions through culture than race. In Germany, fascism took root in a similar manner, a romanticization of the past, a perceived enemy, a unity after a perceived humiliation, and a rejection of modernism. They declared a return to traditional German and Nordic values, to remove or limit Jewish, foreign, and degenerate influences, which ranged from everything to the wrong kind of art to communism. The Nazis wanted Germany to return to an older order. They lamented their losses and, much like in Italy, told their people, once we were great, but we lost our way because of our enemy, and we will be great again if we do what is necessary. In Spain, modernism produced an election result for the Popular Front government of Republicans, Socialists, Syndicalists, and Communists. General Francisco Franco, a staunch anti-communist, led the Spanish army to crush modernism and return Spain to an older, romanticized version of itself. An older order. Once we were great, but we lost our way because of our enemy, and we will be great again if we do what is necessary. In Star Wars: The Force Awakens, we are introduced to the new antagonist of the series, the First Order, rising from the ashes of the Empire. Fascists love to connect themselves to the great deeds of the past and the great men of history, like this guy thinks he's a knight or something, bravely defending the white race from, I don't know, Mexicans? Feminists? Whoever their scapegoat is this week. The name itself, the First Order, romanticizes the past and connects the order both to the past and to the empire, the glorious former institution, much in the same way that Italian fascists connected themselves to the fallen Roman Empire. The heirs of the Roman Empire. So too does the First Order tell its people that they are the heirs to the Galactic Empire. They call themselves the First Order because an admission that they are a brand new and modern thing just doesn't work for fascism. Fascism requires a past, a false history of being wronged because of the envy of others, the envy of their greatness. This is not some new order, no. This is the First Order, an older order. The originals, those tied to the greatness of the past, even if that greatness never happened. The Galactic Empire was built on a lie, oppressed the galaxy, abolished democracy, and was defeated by a ragtag group of rebels. That's who they really were, but that's not what General Hux tells his people. He tells them that they are the inheritors of the empire of the past, and that they will rise again. In the time between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, a republic is born. Leia is no longer a princess. That's ancient and hierarchical. She's committed to democracy, a growing egalitarianism, modernism. The First Order opposes modernism. Fascism opposes modernism. The First Order's actual politics, policies, and specific ideology is purposefully kept vague by the filmmakers and the studio.
So, the actual Star Wars part isn't quite as important to the discussion as, the fascism itself. But again, I think this is a good sort of way for it to be like this reference, pop culture reference, to give context to the discussion. You know what I mean? But anyway, don't get too bogged down in the Star Wars stuff.
Nobody wants to buy a Nazi t-shirt, but everyone is cool wearing Stormtrooper merchandise. So Disney is not going to get too specific. However, the First Order's rhetoric is eerily reminiscent of how fascism begins. Once we were great, we lost our way because of our enemy, and we will be great again if we do what is necessary. What is necessary to fascists includes the eradication of degenerate influences. The First Order carries this out by annihilating the Republic planets. The First Order is obsessed with the past because they have to be. Otherwise, their narrative falls apart. Then they will have dissension among them. Traitors. Kylo Ren has been manipulated by Leader Snoke into his own obsession with the past, his connection to the past and to the Empire, to Darth Vader. Kylo Ren has the burned helmet of Vader as his most cherished keepsake. This was Snoke's plan.
The potential of your bloodline.
It's exactly what fascism always does. It recalls the past, romanticizes it, rejects modernism, and manipulates people into believing the rhetoric about the past. Kylo Ren is the embodiment of the manipulated masses who buy into fascist rhetoric about their shared history and their glorious people. The Last Jedi has us question the past, question the romanticization of the past, and where that historically has led. It has us recognize the failures of the past as a means in which to progress as a people, not to succumb to the past and try to turn back the clock. Luke Skywalker is haunted by his failures, but in the end he learns from his failures and grows.
The war is just beginning, and I will not be the last Jedi.
He looks towards the future. Fascism never forgets its failures and never grows from its failures because it needs its failures. It needs the pain to manipulate people. Fascism refuses to grow from the failures. Instead, it blames the failures on others, on the enemy, often an invented enemy. The past should not be killed, as Kylo Ren says. He's the bad guy. What he says is not the message of the film. Instead, the past is a teacher. Failure, a teacher. Yoda says it himself.
The greatest teacher failure is.
Go forward, not backward. Fascism depends on the past to galvanize the people. Fascism is of the past, and it's best left there.
From Kenner's Star Wars collection, each sold separately. Large-sized Darth Vader with his lightsaber. Princess Leia.
Bam, bam, bam. There you go.
Luke Skywalker.
A little bit of
Action on his grappling hook.
renegade cut there for you.
Star Wars large-size.
Bam. All right, so looks like we've got one person, super fan, on with us tonight still. Perhaps same person, I don't know. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Jump on to the live chat. Tell your friends. Tune in. We now are up to 61 subscribers, and I don't know if that means anything, but hopefully that means more folks are going to start tuning in and jumping in on the discussion about this whole thing. So, with those things in mind, I mean, some folks might look at this and say, well, hold on, he's using a lot of current references to sort of point towards this fascistic leaning that we're starting to see happen in society. So I could see how someone who would be sort of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess in looking at that, maybe that position in a positive light, the modern references to fascism, I guess his reference to the guys dressed as knights and that kind of thing. This move, um, yeah, like if you looked favorably upon those guys that were dressed up with their like helmets and their elbow pads and whatever to fight off the feminists or Antifa or whoever they were fighting, um, if you felt akin to them somehow, I guess you could say that, a lot of times, at least what I've found is a lot of times these folks that believe that would automatically just assume that since you don't believe that, you're just being hyperbolic, calling something you don't like fascist. Or, for instance, the fact that if you don't automatically fall in line with Trump, you must have Trump derangement syndrome. Or you don't like something that Trump said or did, then you must have Trump derangement syndrome. And so if you don't, hopefully people that are on, I guess, on that side of being, the in the world of the they don't like to, I guess, the alt right. If you feel yourself aligned with them, then you would probably feel somewhat defensive about this video comparing your movement to fascism. But the whole point is to look at fascism, really looking at fascism as a set definition of items or of traits. And this is something that wasn't defined by me or defined by, I don't know, some just random professor, I mean, maybe to some degree it was, but it was a long time ago, and it was not based on current events, is the point. And so this is it's sort of a universal definition that we have to look at that transcends the current era, right? This is supposed to be a transcendent definition, something that fascism, whatever time and culture you put it on, if it fits this mold, then it is by definition fascism. I think that's where we run into a lot of problems as a society in general. I'll talk to people about capitalism and some of the critiques on capitalism, and they automatically jump to a state operated, state owned, state centrally controlled um, system like vanguard socialism or state capitalism and these kinds of things, which get into really academic and weird uh, discussion. Like I tried talking about state defining, excuse me, sort of redefining, not redefining, undoing the redefinition of what the Soviet Union was, or what the Chinese government during some periods was, as far as what it is technically defined as. Now, that in an academic, in fact, I even had someone, it was on Twitter, um, I had someone jump, not really to my defense, but in a way to sort of explain. I mean, I understand this, but they felt the need to explain that no, you're technically right, but in the common lexicon, people don't understand what that there is such a thing as state capitalism, right? Where really when you're looking at capitalism versus socialism, you're looking at labor versus capital relations, and that sounds like so foreign language to some people. Some folks, it's not that big a deal. So whatever. Some folks love interior decorating, and some folks suck at it and or shouldn't even think about it. I don't really feel that great about my interior decorating prowess. So I would lean on people. Now, sometimes people don't have the same taste that I do. And I don't know how to define that. However, I just know if they try to tell me some stuff or show me some of the work, I'd be like, man, stay the hell out of my house. So there's certain things people have their strengths and whatever. So anyway, look, at the end of the day, we need to start basically speaking the same language, and that is part of what I wanted to talk about today is this definition of fascism. What is what exactly are we even talking about, and are we really seeing it now? Is it something that we are can be on the lookout for and might be privy to watch building up? And we are in a breeding ground right now for fascism because we are on the verge of an economic collapse. And so as people start getting riled up, start getting scared, start getting hungry, they start looking for scapegoats. They want to get a real they want to now answer. They want a visceral answer that makes them feel good. And so if we get someone who is able to rally against immigrants or rally against Chinese or rally against, I mean, somebody, even if it's a minority person who's rallying against white people, I mean, that could be fascist too. So, I mean, not necessarily just rallying against white people, but using them as a scapegoat, a la the Jews with the Nazis, or a la, sort of in a way, immigrants now with Trump. And I don't know. I don't know. I think people aren't ready to have that discussion. And I think once people are willing to openly confront that discussion, I think people just don't see enough other people talking about it. They don't have the concept in their mind per se, because analysis of this stuff is sort of a pain in the ass. And so unless you really are doing it on purpose, it's hard to really think about you know uh, some of these big topics. It just so happens that I think about this constantly. So I go dig around and try to learn about it and take things that I see that make sense from certain directions and start to realize that as you look at things critically, that there is sort of a ruse going on. There's a wool being pulled over our eyes that they're at least for the capitalist that you're supposed to basically just sort of trust that Milton Friedman's right. Just trust that Hayek is right. What are you going to do? Where's your book that tells Hayek that he's wrong? Um, and the thing is, the people that bring up Hayek, Milton Friedman, all these people, whatever, Art Laffer, or whatever's debunked idiot, not idiot, I shouldn't say that, debunked economist, they want to cite, um, they always they always end up with this sort of straw man argument, this sort of fakey argument, and that's something that I think that people aren't prepared to debunk because that argument's been allowed to stand for so long. Nobody's really come up with the language to debunk it. I mean, Karl Marx wrote big old volume of critique on capitalism. Some other folks maybe read or at least wrote some more accessible books, but it's still a lot of times to really define it and discuss these contradictions. You have to literally write a book, and people just aren't reading that kind of stuff on purpose. And so it's if you had to boil it down, it's basically, as I've said a few times, if you're familiar with the show, we decided as a culture that it's not okay to own people. We should now decide as a culture that it's not okay to rent people. That labor should be partner, just like cash is partner. That if I give you 10 years of my life, that I should have at least as much say as if someone gave you $100 for some shares. There's a dynamic of a trade-off that isn't being accounted for. Now the libertarian would say you're getting paid your wage. That's an agreed upon wage. My contention is that there is no choice but to find a wage. So everybody has to find a wage. So everyone's scrambling to find a wage. Knowing this, the capitalist can pay the lowest wage possible. In fact, there are capitalists that exist who are fighting against having a minimum wage, hoping to drive the wage even lower than a minimum wage, knowing that there are desperate people who are in need enough of cash that they will attempt to make a living for less than minimum wage. These I mean, you get to a point where you simply can't live on that, and you need government assistance. So they are basically creating a life and death situation for someone who now needs to get on the government to be supported in order not to die. See, the thing is, when someone owned another person, it behooved them to keep them alive, so they would have return on investment. Now, in the capitalist wage system, there is no incentive for them to keep you alive. In fact, if they pay you less than it takes to survive, when you die, they'll just find the next guy that's waiting in line, and then that'll all happen until equilibrium is met, and wages will thusly rise. That is the psychopathic ideology that exists within a lot of conservative um, circles. This type of ideology fits just very neatly hand in glove with fascism. And these people are all around us. These are your uncles, these are you, I mean, I don't know who's watching the show now or in the future. These are your family members, these are your friends, these are coworkers. They're all around us that hold these beliefs in silent, or they're vocal about them. And some people I don't think they have a way to discuss these realities. Like, for instance, the way someone has to find a wage. There's no way out of it. And if you think about, and someone may say, well, you can start your own business. Well, yeah, okay, great. Number one, I have to have the means to start that business. With what resources do I start that business? And then that means that I have to get resources, which means I have to enter into exploitation in order to get enough capital to start this new business venture. Also, the skills that I probably have or at least if I do end up having to be exploited in order to earn enough money to create my enterprise by purchasing or creating the means of production. Um, oh man, I just lost my train of thought. Anyway, if you had basically, if you bought your means of production, you still have to be exploited in order to get that to have enough resource to create that means of production. And so, here's the irony: the likely skills that you acquired through exploitation now have to only be used to compete against the person who previously exploited you, which patent law helps to prohibit and non-competes and things like that. So there's all sorts of government protection for these capitalists that hate the government doing anything and ruling and regulating to protect them. However, excuse me, they are fine with them protecting corporations like patent law and things like that, but they are not, and or non-compete, etc. But they certainly do not seem to be as happy about protecting labor rights. Why is that? Who do you think pays for politicians, labor or capital? Right? These are things we should think of deeply. Is it the capitalist, or is it the capitalist with all the money that's paying these politicians, or is it the socialist with all the money? Who is the socialist with all the money? Who's the Marxist with all the money? Who are these people that are literal Marxists and socialists that are paying off the politicians? I'd like to know. Please leave your answer in the comments, or yes, please jump into live comments. Looks like we have one person on, maybe, I don't know, but we haven't had any comments on. Would be great for you to jump on and let us know what you think. But we are, anyway, I don't know, we're coming up to an hour now anyway. Fast fashion, even if you're catching this on the archive, go ahead and, leave a comment, and, I'll pick up on the comments later on, and, by next show, we'll have some comments, or excuse me, we'll have, by next show, we'll have, we'll have some comments, but we'll have something to discuss as well. All right, so what is going on with, oh man, this is confusing here. Hold on, stand by. Trying to get, one of these days, live, okay, here we go. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. One of these days, gonna have a live producer and all of that. You can click the Patreon. That might help someday with live producer. That'd be great. All right, hold on. Let me turn this down. Live producer someday.